Welcome everyone to the 2021 Food Safety Showcases brought to you by FPSA and the Food Safety Network. My name is Elena Sierra. I'm the Director of Networks for the FPSA. So let me hand it over to today's presenters, CFS's Cari and Nicole.
Thank you, Elena. And thank you all for joining Nicole and I as we talk about the use of external resources and training programs. As mentioned, I'm Cari Rasmussen, and I'm a food safety specialist with commercial food sanitation and have been focused on several programs since joining CFS, and that includes training. I look forward to talking with you today on this topic. And now I'll turn it over to Nicole to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Cammarata. I'm the CFS Global Training Manager, and my focus is our in-person training, as well as developing and launching the new CFS digital platform.
All right. Thank you, Nicole. And we're just going to go ahead and turn off our cameras to minimize disruption in the background. So we will go ahead and get started. So thinking about this session, and as we get started, this quote really struck me as a good way to get our minds thinking about our approach to training. The goal of education is understanding, and the goal of training is performance. And if we really think about this quote, we really want to achieve both of these goals, understanding and performance. It's really important that our employees know what to do in order to perform their jobs. So that understanding is really critical. But it's also becoming more and more essential that our employees not only have that performance, but that they have that understanding as well. And so achieving these goals can be difficult in our manufacturing environment. So we want to discuss the use of external resources and how they may be able to help you achieve your training goals, whether it's based on performance, understanding, or both. So on our agenda for today, we're going to talk about the motivation behind training, why we train our employees. We'll talk about external training resources and different ways that external training resources are used to really assist in our overall training programs. We'll go through some advantages and challenges of these different platforms and using external training resources. And then Nicole's going to talk about commercial food sanitation and our approach to continuously improving training to meet customer needs. So what's the motivation for training? Well, we've listed a few here. I'm sure there's several others that I haven't thought about, but taking the first one here, for example, baseline training for new employees. So we need to train our employees so they know what to do when they come in. That includes a wide variety of different types of training, but in today's environment where you may be experiencing a little bit more changeover employees, this baseline training is really critical as we bring in new employees so they know what to do and they can perform their jobs safely. Another motivation for training may be simply because it's a requirement. So we know that it is a requirement to train our employees not only once, but on an annual basis at the very least, to keep them up to speed on what their role is and how to do their role safely. Another motivation for training is that there are evolving needs. We do know that change is constant, and we need to keep up with these changes and communicate these with our employees. Employees may need to learn new skills in order to continue to be effective and efficient in their jobs. So it's not often that we can be trained once on something and never have to be trained again. And so we need to keep up with those changes. And finally, training can be used to develop employees. So this may target technical or people skills, and it's often geared towards long-term development. And training that employee, it helps them grow in their careers with skills that can really help them advance to the next level. But whatever the motivation is, training is an essential part of our operations. So why do we sometimes struggle to keep up with training? Now, keep in mind that the numbers may have changed and that these numbers were taken from a survey early in 2020 prior to the pandemic. But I do firmly believe that these challenges still exist. So when you take a look at scheduling time, at staff turnover, developing current curriculum, and having resources for training delivery, these are some challenges that we struggle to keep up with in our manufacturing environments when it comes to training. So we know that we have some hurdles that we need to get over just to keep up with our programs. So how many companies are using external resources today to help with training and help in executing training that our employees need? Well, as we take a look at this, about 30% of the respondents, again, this is from the same survey that was done early in 2020. And what we found is that about 30% of the training, 30% of the respondents were using external resources. And this included online learning and on-site with external instruction, as well as off-site external training. And these are really the different platforms that we're going to explore today and how these may help you in your goals for training. So as we talk about these options, we're going to talk through, as we talk through these options, I should say, we're going to think about when to apply these different training methods. So you'll see these icons pop up on these different options. But really, using external resources can help us in a few different ways. Curriculum development. So that was something that can be a struggle to keep up with, is having that curriculum actually developed. And that is something that external resources can help with. You may be struggling with staff turnover and finding ways to continue to deliver training. And so external resources may be able to help you with that. You may be looking at developing leaders or having your employees gain some additional expertise. And again, we will explore a little bit more on how external resources may help you deliver on these expectations. So first, let's take a look at digital platforms. Now, these have been around, and I think that these have really quickly developed into a top option for training, especially in the last 1.5 to 2 years. And we look at these in a couple of different ways. One is on-demand sessions, or they may be live remote sessions. And so as we think about these digital platforms, we'll take a look at some advantages and challenges when it comes to these. So from the advantages perspective, one is its accessibility. That's one of the key advantages when you think about on demand. It's exactly that, it's on demand. And that means that you can train employees really anytime and anywhere, in some cases using a variety of technologies. It might be on as simply as on a phone, it could be a tablet, it could be a computer. But the fact is that you can, at a touch of a button, really give an on-demand training when it's needed. Now, for a live session, that accessibility might not be as much of an advantage, as those need to be scheduled. But with the on-demand, that's definitely a huge advantage. Another advantage is really using minimal plant resources. So in both cases, you're not having to develop the curriculum, and you're also not going to have a person deliver that training. And that's whether it's on demand or if you're using that live remote session. So that if you're really struggling with having resources in those areas, this can really be helpful and may be a great option. Another one that may seem obvious, but social distance, which is still, I think, important today. The digital option really does help with that social distance. So you can, again, have employees take training not only in one big training room, but you may have separate little areas where they may be able to do training, and in some cases, maybe even do training from home. And another potential advantage is just the cost. So as you take a look at the cost of training, this is one that may be a little bit less costly than some of the other platforms that we're going to be talking about coming up. Now, some of the challenges with digital platforms, because there are a lot of advantages, one of those is there may be minimal customization. So with an on-demand session, that curriculum has already been developed. And so although that may meet a lot of your basic needs, it's going to be potentially a little more difficult to go ahead and have that be customized when an external resource has put that curriculum together. Having that trainer or trainee interaction, so having those two interact can also be challenging. When we think about on-demand options in particular, you really don't have that option for a true question-answer session. And so you just don't get that interaction. Now, in a live remote session, you may get a little bit more interaction, but it's not quite the same as being in person either. And so sometimes it can be a little bit more challenging to truly create that connection as you're giving that training. Hands-on becomes difficult as well. So as you can imagine, as you're trying to teach through on-demand or live remote sessions, that hands-on becomes quite difficult. And this is one that I think that will be a focus point moving forward, is how to really get more engaged through whether it's on-demand or live remote trainings. Distractions and accountability. this is one as well, as many of you may have experienced, is that we oftentimes try to multitask, and when you're in front of a computer, it's very tempting to try to multitask as you're going through training or listening to webinars for that matter. And so it can be very difficult to really keep the participants engaged. And you really, especially through on-demand, really don't have a true sense of how much they are engaged other than through any potential testing that you may have during that session or following those sessions. And lastly, a challenge could be technology. This is something that I think, again, we may have all experienced, is that there's a lot of different platforms that are used, and we really rely on the technology to work effortlessly and seamlessly. And although I do believe that we're getting better with this and we continue to improve in this area, there's that technology can sometimes be a little bit of a hurdle to get over. So as you can see here with our little icons, developing curriculum and potentially handling staff turnover, this is where digital platforms may be really useful. As you think about the fact that you have that accessibility for staff turnover, if you're bringing in new people frequently, you have that ability to have that accessibility on demand. And so those really do work in concert together to help you if you have that particular challenge. Moving on to on-site training. And this is where an external resource is going to be brought to you at your facility. So as we take a look at some of the advantages and challenges here, one of the advantages is that you have that subject matter expert brought to you, to your plant, to your facility. And what that enables is that you can have training that's much more targeted to your plant or to your situation. Although that external resource will be coming in with some type of an agenda, there should be an opportunity to work with them and customize that content to meet your needs. Another advantage here is that you create that safe room. And what we mean there is you can really open up discussion within that space. When you're working within your own company, you have a trainer and also in a way a facilitator that can help facilitate those discussions that are very targeted to the needs and challenges that you may be gaining education on or training on. And that safe room really allows you, again, to open up that discussion in a way that gets you moving forward on your action plans sooner rather than later. And lastly, that hands-on can be incorporated a little bit more here. And that's whether the trainer is bringing in materials to the plant to help with that, or it could be that the facility that you're going to as an external resource, you can use some of the materials that are at your facility or at your plant. So again, that kind of also comes into play with that customization. Some of the challenges with on-site training: one, it is difficult to train everybody. So depending on the size of your facility or staff that you're having trained, it may be difficult to have everybody go through that training. You know, depending on the size of the room, the size of that session, you may not be able to get everybody trained. So it may be a little bit more targeted to specific members of your operations in this case. You may also find that this is a little bit more costly, not only just in money when you think about bringing somebody on site and some of the costs that are associated with that, but also when you think about the resources in the resource time. Bringing an external resource on site really means that in many cases, you're spending more than just that half hour to an hour in training. You may have more of multi-hour, half day, maybe full day to over a day of training to really dive deeper into some topics. And with that, that's time that employees are spending, valuable time getting that training, but it also pulls them from their day-to-day job. And so when you think about some of those challenges, it can be difficult to be pulled away for that period of time. But again, as we summarize why, you know, in some cases why you would look to use this training, looking back at our icons here, developing leaders and gaining expertise is where you may really consider bringing those external subject matter experts to your site. And you're going to take a look at how do we utilize this expertise to share that expertise and gain that within your facility, and help develop leaders that will then be able to use those skills and train others within the facility. So this is where you may look at on-site training as an advantage within your training program. Moving on next to the off-site training. And this is where employees will travel to a location that an external resource is offering training. And with that, some of the advantages of that offsite training is, one, the facility is oftentimes optimized for that training. So whether it's technical or people skills, there will be some tools that are available and some hands-on that you will be able to receive at that facility, as it's really built for that training and to dive deeply into that topic. It also becomes a networking opportunity. This is often an opportunity for those employees that go and attend this training. They can really network with others, whether it's within your industry, it may be other industries, other companies, and it takes advantage of the fact that you can learn best practices just across and gain that breadth of best practices across industries and companies. So it's that opportunity to learn from others' success and or failures for that matter. And really this last one, it becomes a very extensive and immersive experience. So when we think about ways that people learn and minimizing distraction, again, we talked about the digital platform being potentially distractive as we sit at our computers and are easily distracted. When you do this in-person off-site training, it becomes very immersive. And it really allows the people and the participants to focus in on that training, spend that time together, dive deeper into topics, have those in-depth discussions, and hopefully take from that the passion that's given forth in that training and bring it back to their facilities. Some of the challenges here you'll find are similar to the on-site training. One is that, again, this is usually targeted to a select few, so it is difficult. Again, you can't send everybody from your facility to these trainings, so you're usually going to have a targeted few employees that are engaged in that training. And from a pure costs perspective, again, it can be costly, not just in money for travel and the training program, but there is also, again, that resource that is then needed to, they leave, they do get immersed in that experience, which is fantastic. However, they do leave that day to day, which can be difficult for the employee as well as for the facility. But again, similar to the on-site training, we find that overall you will look to apply this type of training using offsite training to really help develop leaders and gain expertise. So when you think about retention of employees, for example, it may be helpful as you take a look at the opportunities your employees have and look to develop those leadership skills and really gain expertise that they will be able to apply not only in their role today, but in their role that you may anticipate having in the future. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, and she's going to talk through a little bit of the CFS Institute.
Thank you, Cari. Up until recently, as many of you might know, CFS trainings consisted of only in-person trainings. We basically had two options. One was traveling to our training facilities or a food safety specialist traveling to a customer's facility for a hands-on workshop. However, during the past year and a half, in speaking to our customers, there's been some concern on how they're going to train employees remotely. So we saw this as an opportunity to not only continuously improve for ourselves by propelling into the digital training world, but also as an opportunity to help our customers. So we took the two training methods that Cari just spoke about and are going to give our learners a blended learning training experience. Using this blended learning tactic will enable us to not only maximize the advantages, will enable us to maximize the advantages of both approaches. So in our specific approach, we're going to use the digital on-demand modules as prerequisites to ensure sort of a base level of understanding. And then we'll follow up with our in-person sessions and have the ability to go deeper on topics in person. And that will enable us to have more time to execute an applicative hands-on workshop. And in having some of those same customer conversations, we realized there was a desire to have certifications. So we're taking our blended learning and offering various food industry certifications. The first one we're going to work on is CFS Hygienic Design Certification. So I'm just going to take a few moments and describe to you how we're using this blended learning approach for the hygienic design certification. So it's comprised of several different steps, again, using both digital and in-person. So as you can see on the screen, step one is going to be an on-demand digital approach that's going to consist of prerequisites. Step two will be an in-person hygienic design training. Step three will be some more digital modules and more of like a base understanding as well, going a little bit deeper, although into some of the topics that you learned in hygienic design training. Step four, we're going to have another opportunity to come together, but in a remote session, but it will be live, and an opportunity to ask the expert, thus our CFS food safety specialist, some questions about the material that they received in the digital component. Step five is going to be taking another digital approach and going even deeper into some of the concepts that you've already learned. And then step six will be a case simulation and a time for reflection on what you've learned and where that is going to continue to take you and what other topics that you need to continue to kind of dive in on. And then at the end, you'll be awarded with the CFS Hygienic Design Certification.
Thank you, Nicole, for taking us through that. So hopefully you can see a little bit on how this all comes together. And here you can see where we do have a plan that's laid out. And starting hopefully in April of 22, we'll start to really launch our certification program. So with that, we have, when we think about the future of training, we've seen a lot of changes. We've seen a lot of quick advancements in the different types of trainings, really to meet the customer needs and the demands that customers have in the environment that we're in today. And so, taking those steps to truly understand customers is something that external resources are really looking to do. And again, provide opportunities to advance their training to meet those needs. And so as we've seen through the example of what commercial food sanitation is doing through the CFS Institute and looking at that blended learning approach and taking the best of all of those opportunities, we then are who knows what the future holds, but we do believe that there's more opportunity to create even more hands-on through remote sessions. When we think about the opportunities that technology has really afforded us today, we think that there's opportunities to bring the best of technology into our training in the future. So we're really excited about what that could bring, and we'll continue to, as external resources look to optimize training for those that need it, we'll continue to develop those resources to provide for those needs. So in closing, really, we hope that this conversation has provided some insight into how external resources can help train and really augment your current training programs. And ideally that will help, with those needs that you have, and ideally really help retain employees as well. As employees are engaged in the training, as they're engaged in what they do in a day-to-day, when they feel that they know what they do and they have opportunities to grow and learn in a company, that should hopefully help them in their journey within their career paths and look at the opportunities that the company is affording them through that training. And so we definitely want to train folks so that they know what to do, but we also want to motivate them so that they look to advance within our own companies. So with that, we definitely thank you for your time and attention. And if you have any questions now or in the future, we definitely encourage you to share those, again, either now or you can reach out to us with our contact information.
Great. Thank you guys so much for your presentation today. Let me see if any questions have come in. Let's see. For those attending, watching the presentation online, you can also shoot your questions over Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and I will respond there. Just use hashtag FPSA. There does look like there's one question that came in, and it is there anything changing with in-person CFS training sessions? Because you talked about changes for the online. Is there anything changing for the in-person?
Thank you, Elena. Nothing is necessarily changing. We are going to be offering our certifications, but we'll still offer our in-person trainings that we normally offer. As I had mentioned, with hygienic design training, we will have a little bit of an update to that training because we will be able to have more time to spend in the hands-on workshops. So it's going to become a little bit more engaging, but you still will be able to take all of the in-person trainings that we offer currently with or without the certification pathway.
Well, that's terrific, and I know that's got to be very useful to know that your customers have that flexibility. See if there's any other questions. Again, if you're joining us online, hashtag FPSA. Let's take a look. I don't see any questions coming in. So we'll end, for those who are watching this live, we're going to end the broadcast now, and we'll just, Cari and I will just, and Nicole will just hang on for a second if anyone's thinking of a question and they just want a moment to ask it. All right, so thank you guys for joining us online, and please feel free to reach out to today's presenters, Cari and Nicole, over LinkedIn, which you can find in their bios on the online page. And we then thank everyone.